Okay, we are on the air for our September 16th work session, and we start with a system development partners. I understand it's DC's 101, and then specific talk about transportation.
Yes. And thank you, Mayor Beatty. I'm Peter Pasquale, the Public Works Director, and with me tonight I have John Gilarducci from actually FCS Bowman.
Yeah.
And
FCS is still.
And Zach Hazel from FCS. So we've worked with this team before on our water and wastewater STCs. I thought what we would do, it's been a while since we've talked about STCs, and I know we have some new counselors that I thought it would be good to sort of start from the basics and have a little bit of the fundamentals of STCs, and then we'll dig into some preliminary analysis that we've done on our transportation STCs. And then talk a little bit about what our next steps are. So I'm going to turn it over to the experts.
Thank you very much, Peter. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. So yeah, as Peter mentioned, we'll talk about SDC fundamentals and some sort of 101, and then Zach will go through the initial calculations and then next steps. So some things that are important to remember about system development charges. These are the one-time fees paid at the time of development by new development. Sometimes redevelopment pays them when they intensify their use of redevelopment systems, but generally imposed on new development only. The law provides for system development charges for water, wastewater, stormwater, transportation, and parks. So we've talked with you before about water and wastewater, actually parks a few years ago, and now we're talking transportation SDCs. SDCs are for capital only, so you can only spend the money on capital projects. We calculate them based on cost of infrastructure that's already been built and the cost of planned infrastructure. So it's all about capital with one tiny exception, which we'll talk about a little later. I sort of alluded to it. There are two fees to a system development charge. One is called the reimbursement fee. That is a buy-in to existing infrastructure. So anything that's been built, maybe overbuilt, so there's capacity available to future users. That's the basis of the reimbursement fee. The other fee is future looking, and that's called the improvement fee. So you think of the list of capital projects that are planned for construction. That's the basis for the improvement fee, and we'll talk a little bit in detail about that. Both of those in a moment. Lastly, of these key characteristics, STCs they're intended to represent a share of system capacity. So the big stuff, right? Not the water meter or the egress to your property if it's transportation, share of the public system. So the law is really good, in my opinion. We work with STC, and in fact, the law around the region, Oregon's STC law is really good. Gives us a recipe for what we have to consider in calculating the charges, how to spend the money, what has to be on the list, the rules and considerations are in there. It's ORS 223.297 through 316. And just to give you a little bit of the flavor of the different sections, we won't go through these in any detail, but the real meat of the ORS sections as they pertain to system development charges, the real meat's in 223.304. That's the one that tells us what we have to consider when we calculate the reimbursement fee, what we have to consider when we calculate the improvement fee. It has a requirement that you provide, as a city, provide credits to developers who build a project off the list as a condition of development. You got to give credit against their SDC. That language is in 304. Also, noticing requirements, and we'll come back to this in the next steps, but any city has to provide 90 days notice before the public hearing at which they act upon a new system development charge. So, we'll get done with all our work, arrive at an analysis that you're comfortable with, and then you start the 90-day notice period, the last 60 days of which the report has to be available. So any interested party can come in and scrutinize the work, and you will not be surprised as a council then at that public hearing 90 days from in advance. So those noticing requirements are also in 304. 309 talks about the requirements of the project list, timing, cost, etc. So it's all there. Not a bad read, actually. I mentioned the two different fees, the reimbursement fee and the improvement fee. This is what the math looks like. That reimbursement fee, what we're trying to isolate is the cost of any unused capacity in the existing system, whichever system it is. You take that dollar amount, divide it by the growth that it will serve, and that gives us our. The improvement fee, on the other hand, this is the one, picture the list of capital projects to be constructed. You have to go through and isolate the growth-related portion in each of those projects. So the part that's increasing capacity for future users, that's the includable part in the improvement fee calculation. We add all those up, again, divide by the growth that they will serve, and that gives us our improvement fee. So when you've got both fees, they together equal the system development charge. It could also be one or the other if there's no basis. One of the two fees.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Peter, who does this? Who calculates this?
They do, yeah.
Okay, so this is outsourced?
We
Have a retainer or something?
we engage in contract with, we've engaged in contract with FCS as we've gone through the updates on our system things. So we updated our water SDCs after we adopted our water system plan. We did the same thing with wastewater, and we're in the process of doing the TSP. So we're in that process of coming back and updating it. We'll incorporate those projects that are in the adopted TSP into the calculations at the end. And then, so we'll have that figured out for the transportation piece. And then we still have the stormwater system plan we talked about, I think, earlier this month. We'll follow with a similar process and go through that and update that SDC, those SDCs as well.
So, believe it or
So
not,
it's like
this is what we do, rates and system development.
It's like every 7 to 10 years, it feels like that we are updating the methodology and incorporating in the new projects.
Well, the methodology is one thing, but don't we have to do this for each project? I mean, we don't change the methodology, but we basically deliver a bill to the developer, right? And I'm not just talking about transportation, I'm everything.
You all, to clarify, the numerator there is what you're doing in that 7-year process. The denominator is easy enough that the city can calculate that for every transaction. So to Councilor Massey's point, you're taking that numerator and finding what we're dividing by, but the city in each individual STC application is determining what that denominator would be.
So in the calculation of the number that will be charged to a development property, that denominator is growth in total trips all around the city. So we don't yet need to know what it is for each individual property. We're going to divide it by growth in trips from now until the end of the. And then the result of that will be a dollar amount per single family dwelling unit.
Councilor Massey's points though, you're not calculating that denominator every single time. That's what the city is doing. It's a one-time numerator calculation that we use for 7 years.
We also do the one-time denominator, or we will use the denominator from the city's planning documents, and that doesn't usually change until you update the charges 3 or 5 or 7 years from now, even though you read the statute and you think about it, it should be dynamic, right? Every time you finish a project, it should move from one list to the other list, fewer trips left in growth, but the fact that usually what cities do, they calculate it based on the best information they got. 5 years later, they update it based on the new information.
But the fee to a particular development is calculated by the city.
Right.
Yep. That varies.
Okay. Yeah, so, and actually Jeff, our assistant city
You
engineer,
answered the question.
calculates that.
You made to say it.
Yeah.
Sorry, this is the point there. So focusing on growth, the denominator, this, we will first try to determine what's the best basis for the fees, and you'll see it's trip generation, person trips, and we'll talk a little bit about this. We want to try and characterize the current number of trips, the future number of trips, growth is obviously future, less present. That's our denominator. And we want to make sure that forecast fits the planning period for the project, so that we're consistent between the growth and the projects that are planned to serve that growth. And that's what we find in the TSP. Right now, the numbers you'll see here are based on the TSP before the update to come. That's generally how we're determining growth. For that reimbursement fee cost basis, graphically, we're just looking at that. I is all of your transportation infrastructure. We're trying to isolate that portion, if any, that is unused capacity available for future users.
So how do you, I get how you measure unused capacity. I get conceptually how you measure unused capacity in water, like the system can generate X number of gallons of water, or wastewater, the system can process X number of EDUs of wastewater. But with transportation, how do you measure unused capacity? And are we doing that for all modes of transportation?
So it's really hard. Because, first of all, let's say one of the most straightforward ways to do it would be to look at every intersection. What is your level service target for that intersection? Is it a C or a D? And only if an intersection is operating at a higher level of service would there be any unused capacity. That information is very difficult to find. It's not super reliable. So more often than not with transportation, not only is there very little unused capacity when you look at it that way, but when you think about how the transportation system has been funded through the highway fund, through gas tax, right, or through other sort of general sources, I think a developer could argue, hey, I pay gas tax like everybody else. I pay property taxes like everybody else. I've already paid for a share of the infrastructure that's been built. Why are you charging me again in the reimbursement fee? So, long story short, one of the ways we will try to quantify unused capacity with transportation is we look at what the city has spent over the last many years and assume that that money has been spent on capacity increasing infrastructure, and that gives us a basis then for a reimbursement fee. We'll also make an adjustment to account for the growth that's occurred and consume some of that capacity. It's imperfect, but it gives us something for that reimbursement.
Can I also clarify, as you're taking our TSP and trying to calculate the future capacity, are you looking at just our fiscally constrained list? Or are you looking at the entire TSP? We're talking about it later tonight, and the difference there is a $27 million fiscally constrained list versus a $180 million total list. And I'm just curious how you calculate those numbers.
Yeah, so generally, our preference is to look at the unconstrained list, because if you only look at the fiscally constrained list, that's all you're ever going to be able to fund. But the answer to your question varies a lot from city to city, what they want us to look at. And what do we have in our full list? We got the full unconstrained list in the numbers you'll see here.
2018.
Yeah.
I will say the other part is just because a project is in a project list in one of the system plans doesn't mean that it's an eligible project for reimbursement or for the improvement fee. So it has to be related to.
Well, the point as you see is the total project list number is really big. The number that we can safely say is providing capacity for growth is a fraction of that total. So the STC reflects that. We're real careful not to overestimate what is growth related. So yeah. That makes sense.
It does, yeah.
I think the other thing too is like since Milwaukie, and we've noticed this with our water and wastewater SDCs, we're on the lower side when compared to other communities because we're a pretty built out community, right? Most of our infrastructure is built out. There's not an enormous amount of space for large developments.
And some of the infrastructure the city currently has is older infrastructure, so the focus of some of these project lists is replacement. And we can't really, unless you're replacing it and upsizing it, we can't include straight replacement in the SBC.
I guess I'm struggling to conceptualize how that then would apply to like bike and pedestrian facilities. Like we have a road 32nd that has a TSP project for $2.3 million. And that road already has sidewalks along it, but this would reduce the pedestrian traffic level of stress down from a 2 to a 1. And so the sidewalk is a little bit wider. You're not like, in some ways it would allow for more people to walk, but it maybe is more of a safety improvement. Like, how do you take a project like that is important if we're adding capacity on a road like 32nd, but isn't necessarily like as straightforward as adding a second lane to 32nd?
So generally, projects like that, and this includes ADA improvements, bike lanes, sidewalks. We will assume that you are, and even though it's a little theoretical, you may be adding a sidewalk that is your minimum standard size, but we will assume that you're not adding sidewalks to serve only your existing population. You are adding sidewalks, bike lanes to serve the current population and expected growth. So we'll do a proportional allocation of those projects and say, okay, if at the end of the planning period, 20% of the city's population or future trips will be growth from this point to that point, then we'll say 20%, usually it'll be a lower percentage that, but 20% of the sort of general projects like sidewalks and bike lanes will allocate to do that proportionally. It's a simplifying assumption that has stood the test of time. We've been doing it this way on those types of projects. Okay. So yeah, reimbursement fee, we talked about sort of the reimbursement fee basis. This is the infrastructure that's already in the ground. We make a couple of adjustments. Doesn't really apply to transportation. If there were debt outstanding, we would deduct it so that ratepayers, between water and sewer, don't pay the full cost of the project, and then the debt service again and the rates. So that's an adjustment we make. One of the nice things about having a reimbursement fee is you can spend that money, if you account for it separately, on any transportation capital projects. They don't have to be capacity increasing projects, just the reimbursement fee. The improvement fee, you can only spend on growth-related capacity increasing projects. So there's just a little nuance there that if you account for them separately, you've got more flexibility. So the improvement fee, now the pie is planned projects And the slice we're trying to carve out is what of that project list is capacity increasing growth-related project costs. And then, we will determine, one of the things we'll do now too with, for example, projects that are planned on facilities is you can include the city share of those projects if you're trying to leverage ODOT's participation. But only your own agency, your city's costs. We take out costs that will be paid by another agency. As I mentioned, just we're trying to isolate that capacity increasing portion for inclusion. And then one last point here before we get to the preliminary numbers. You'll see a number, and if it's higher than the current STC, the council has the choice to choose anything up to the calculated number. What we calculate will be what we believe is the legally defensible maximum charge. Council can decide to move up to that amount. Excuse me, sneeze, didn't, okay.
Can I ask an example using water? So we talk about, one of the projects that we talk about with our water CIP is improving, a new water purification system to get out PFAS. So it's an improvement because it's meeting regulatory things, but it's not necessarily a capacity driven. So we have to segregate out what part of that project might be about increasing our capacity, but a lot of it is about our existing residents, right?
Yeah, so the part of it though, and we would go to the trouble to try and determine the part of it that we could say, because you're going to make those improvements not only to serve current volumes, but projected future volumes. So you would have a basis for allocating a portion of those improvements based on that growth-related portion. So we will, even those regulatory driven improvements, we can usually allocate a portion of those to growth.
Okay, and Peter, when you guys decide to move on a CIP project, you actually look back at the SDC report and go, okay, how much of the SDCs can, when you're trying to figure out how to put the funding together for a CIP project?
If you look at our CIP, there are certain projects that where we have gone back and allocated SDCs for those projects.
Can I ask a clarifying question on that too, Peter? I may have misheard you, John, but do we, within that SDC fund, do we sequester reimbursement fee proceeds and improvement fee proceeds and only use them?
The improvement fund proceeds go into the specific SDC fund, and we have, I think historically, the reimbursement fee component has gone into the utility fund.
Oh, okay. And so
it's
that's
used
how that gets used for that existing.
for general CIP projects.
Okay, that's helpful.
And not everybody does, in fact, a lot of cities don't do that, and we try and remind them that if they do, they've got that additional flexibility. Yeah, but it's easier to just stick it in one pot.
I see a crossover point and decision point here. And I don't know if this ever, comes into play, but say, you're looking at, replacing existing capacity. Okay, so there's no SDC. And the cost is X. And so then you look at, well, should we increase the capacity? So let's say it's X plus 25%. And so then you can collect SDCs. So is there ever a point where you say, there's just an economic value at expanding the capacity? Maybe without real need?
You can only include the 25% in the SDC. So I would say I haven't seen that driven by the economics a lot more about the policy/politics of SDCs, which vary a lot from city to city. What, the growth, we want growth to pay for growth. We're going to push every dollar we can into the SDCs versus there are very different attitudes in most of the other parts of the state where they don't even want to be perceived as being unfriendly or possibly chasing away growth, which we also haven't seen, but we hear that concern a lot. But I haven't run like an economic analysis on that, but I also haven't seen it.
I think there's an economic component, but there's also like an operational component to that. We don't want to build something where we have too much capacity or we're over capacity. So I will think of our water system in particular. Water had a shelf life, in terms of we don't want to have too much water in storage. I mean, in theory, maybe it sounds good, but we still have to make sure that it stays disinfected, that it's getting, it's going through the system. So we don't want to have too much capacity out there. We don't want to have to pump too much water out into the system. So there's that component of it too. So, but, generally, our city, we have a lot of aged infrastructure where a lot of our water mains in lots of the residential neighborhoods are smaller than they should be and for fire protection. So a lot of the integrated projects that we have, we're going in sizing our water system, the water mains increasing from 4 to 8 inches for fire flow. And I don't know if fire flow on itself is eligible for STCs, but a portion of it, yeah. So we do that, but
Well, I guess in the scenario I described, you really couldn't make the defensible argument if you were building excess capacity.
Right, I think, well, almost in every case, especially if you're talking about stormwater, water, wastewater, those project lists are the product of the master plan. And the master plan is all about what is our assessment of existing facilities, what's needed to serve the projected growth. And it's more of a technical analytical document that results in this list. And then, okay, how do we fund this, right? You're not usually going at it, and we've got, should we be setting SDCs to try and build this stuff bigger? That's usually the last thing.
Well, it almost sounds like the methodology prevents people gaming the system.
Yes, it's intended to.
Yeah.
It's intended to protect developers from being gouged, basically.
And I really look at the SDCs as sort of a supplementary source of funding because it's really sort of speculative, right? We have development that's planned. There's certain developments that we've had in the city that I know we've talked about since I've been here that still haven't occurred. And we generally plan for those things, but we don't realize those revenues because the development doesn't happen, so.
You got high growth years and low growth years, and so the revenues are very low. Okay, any other general methodology question? Of course, anytime.
So you'll let me know if she is, or okay.
So now we're going to take a look at applying all that theory to the actual numbers that we use to generate this initial analysis. It relies on the city's 2018 TSP as well as the current CIP. So these numbers will be updating and changing as we get the new TSP coming in. So this is a
Transportation system plan.
Thank you.
We actually knew that.
What do we do? But it's always good to explain those acronyms.
So I like to show the full calculation up front so that you'll know kind of as a road plan and roadmap what we're going to look at coming up ahead. So the top part of this table, you'll see there's improvement fee cost basis, reimbursement fee cost basis, compliance costs, and then there's the total cost basis. And then in the columns, you'll see the 3 different ways that we did this calculation. So the first column there is looking at the city's CIP, the second column is looking at the TSP, and the third column is looking at some joining of those two lists, but making sure that we're not double counting any projects. So for just to focus on the combined list, because that's probably easiest to follow along with, you can see that the improvement fee cost basis in this case is 5.5 million. That's that future-looking component of the list, adding capacity to the system. The reimbursement fee cost basis, the next line there, only 611,000. That's the value of capacity already in the system. And then there's compliance costs. That's that small operational piece that John was talking about, where you can include some amount in the STC to pay for the administration of the STC program. The total cost basis then is 6.18 million. We then take that total cost basis and we divide it by the expected growth that we're going to see here, which in this case is 2,300 peak hour PM person trip ends, which I'll explain in a moment. So then below that in the table, you get all of the different fees, with the very bottom fee in bold being the calculated STC per PM peak hour person trip end. Focusing on the combined list, you can see the charge there would be $26.87, or for a single family residence, they would be expected to pay about $3,982.
Can you define peak hour person trip end?
Yeah, that's a great idea. Let's do that. So now we're going to walk through the calculation in pieces. And we're going to focus first on the growth, which is the denominator of 2,300. So first defining what a PM peak hour person trip end. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I there we go. Okay, there we go. I'm clicked on my screen. Okay. So the TSP projects out what are called PM peak hour vehicle trip ends. And what that means is in the peak PM hour, let's say 4 to 5, how many vehicles entered or left particular properties at a particular time. So like, for example, at the grocery store, 5 people came in at 4, 5 people left at 4, a total of 10 trip ends at that grocery store. The TSP basically projects how many trip ends are going to be in the city as a whole. And that's what you see in 2010 is that first number. Right? And then it projects it out to the end of the planning period, which in this case was 2035. So you can see we're growing from 21,000 PM peak hour vehicle trip ends up to 24,816 by 2035. So a growth of 1,500 PM peak hour vehicle trip ends. Now, vehicle trip ends basically are only looking at automobiles entering and leaving property, right? But your project list contains a bunch of head and bike projects as well. And so we have to develop a rational nexus between the project list and the growth that we're providing for. And a person trip end is a much better use of that, because rather than looking at the automobiles, we're looking at however they arrived. We're counting how many people are arriving or leaving a particular development. So they could be arriving by bike, or 5 people piled into a van, they would count as 5 trips. If they arrived on a bike, that'd be 1 trip. So looking at, yeah.
Buses and max?
Yes, absolutely, yeah. Walking. Yep.
So how are those all accounted for? I mean, how are those all estimated?
So the Institute of Traffic Engineers, Transportation Engineers, they do these studies where they, post up at a property and they measure how many people are coming in and out during these PM peak hours. And they do a variety of studies and they come up with an average rate per, like for example, per dwelling unit or per 1,000 feet of leasable area, for example.
And that's like a national standard, or that's an Oregon standard?
Yeah,
or
national.
National standard.
And so are these numbers up here for Milwaukie?
Yes, so that's correct. Yes, especially if you're looking at the top row, that comes directly from the TSP. The 2010 and 2035 figures come directly from the TSP.
Can I ask a dumb question?
Sure.
If we think of our population is 22,000 people, how can we have about 14,000 more trip ends than that? So I'm looking at the 2025, the 36,800. I just guess I'm not quite understanding. Is it the same person coming and going a couple times, or?
So land uses will generate the trips, and those trips do not care whether
not just where they're
from out the city.
Okay. So it could be someone ending, like going to New Seasons to go grocery shopping or something.
Or it could be people who work here or who don't even live here.
Yeah, exactly.
I think I was interpreting the end as like, you're going home at the end of the night. It's
Oh,
the
yeah, it's
end of your
one end
day.
of a trip. So
One
a
end
trip
of a
is one thing, and then you have 2 ends. Yeah.
I got it. Thank you. That's very helpful.
So, did you?
Could I also clarify growth share? You have both the vehicle trip and person trips growing at the same rate.
Yes.
But we also, as a city, have a climate action plan that would suppose that we reduce VMT. So I would imagine that we, if we're following our climate action plan, would hope to see person trips expand at a rate that's higher than vehicle trips. Does that math right now?
Yeah, that's a great point. And so I'll explain. So, and that is a great point. Hopefully the TSP that you guys are working on will have some clarification on that. But what we did is not having information on exactly how many person trips you're going to be adding. We did a very simple conversion factor. Just to reemphasize, the top row comes from your TSP, but the second row is our estimate. And we estimate that based on another national survey called the National Household Travel Survey. That gives us the conversion factor from a vehicle trip to a person trip of about 1.58. So that's how we got that set.
To Councilor Anderson's point though, so if we had information in our TSP that suggested that we were going to see more peak hour person trip ends because of, we're trying to reduce, we're through our climate action plans and transportation work that we're doing, that would be allowable to increase that growth share.
Absolutely. Our primary goal is that the growth we use fits the project list in the plan. So, and that's the case for the 2018 plan going forward. We're trying to do the same thing. The new TSP.
Okay, so any more questions about the growth? So what we've got here is after making that conversion, we have the total denominator of 2,300 PM peak hour person trip. So we got that out of the way. Now we can focus on the numerator of the SDC calculation. So starting with the CIP cost basis, remember we did this 3 different ways. This one just looks at the city's CIP. So the vast majority of the projects on the list appear to be mostly repair, replacement, major maintenance projects. And so the vast majority of the list is not providing additional capacity for new growth. You notice too that we've also assumed that these sidewalk infill projects where there should be a sidewalk here, but there isn't a sidewalk, we're not counting those. We're not counting ADA, being very conservative in our estimates there. Because you could have both ways. You could have people argue that if there's supposed to be a sidewalk there, why are you making me pay for it if there was already supposed to be one there? So, but there, yeah, like John said, there is just some discretion as to which projects fit that description or not. So there's not a ton of projects that are adding like brand new transportation facilities, but there are a lot of projects that add new infrastructure to your existing streets. Because they're on existing streets, they're for existing facilities, and those facilities are already serving existing customers, we use the growth share to allocate those projects. So basically saying, you've got growth coming in, you've got existing users already using these facilities, they're going to share this new infrastructure on your existing street. So growth gets their share, which is 5.61% of the total trips in 2035. So long story short, big project list, unfortunately, not very much of it is adding capacity for new growth. If you look at the TSP, that problem is more emphasized, but we also have a bigger project list. So we have $1.2 billion of projects, which does include some regional transportation projects on it. And we're doing the same method of assigning growth share to those projects that are shared between existing and future users. And so in this case, we have $5 million of eligible costs. But still, once again, a very small percentage of the total project list. Okay, that's the improvement fee cost basis part of the numerator. There's also the reimbursement fee cost basis part of the numerator. As John alluded to, we looked at your previous improvement fee expenditures on the system, improvement fee SDCs. And the reason that's so important is because the law only permits you to use improvement fee SDCs on capacity expansion. And so we know that if you spent improvement fee in, let's say, 2015, we know that you were adding capacity because you could presume you're following the law. Now that capacity, like this, for example, we have records going back to 2014, that capacity is getting used up. We assume that 5% of it is getting used up per year. And just a very basic assumption. With those assumptions in mind, there's about $611,000 of reimbursable capacity, about 76% of those expenditures. Okay, and that brings us back to the transportation SDC. We've seen all the individual pieces. And so now you can see how if we're looking at the CIP project list, the SDC is $549, the TSP project is $2,500, the combined list is $2,700. And just as a reminder, the combined list is not the sum of the previous two because we're also removing duplicate projects. So it ends up being less than the sum of the other two SDCs. So that's where we left off. We do have a new TSP coming. Oh, sorry, got ahead of myself here. This next slide shows a sample of land uses with the combined list SDC. So you can see for a single family detached unit, which is the second line, they pay $3,982. For a multifamily, low-rise, not close to rail transit, they pay $1,300. This is just a sample. The ITE manual includes hundreds of land uses that the city will have available when they get a new permit. So that's all looking at the list we currently have. We are expecting the TSP update. As I said earlier, the current TSP is from 2018. The new TSP should be under consideration in December. So it's going to have updated growth assumptions, perhaps new person trip assumptions, updated project lists, brand new cost estimates, and some have new growth eligibility calculations depending on data is available in that TSP. So a lot of these numbers are a little different once we incorporate that new TSP. As a highlight of the draft TSP project list, there's $179 million on the draft list. Currently, there's a larger financially constrained list than it's going to have to end up being the case. So right now, there's $27.5 million in these financially constrained project lists. Or sorry, that's what's allowed in the current financially constrained list. The city is projecting $22 million in funding for that financially constrained list. That's so basically the funding, we can assume 125% of that funding, or 27.5, is included in the financially constrained list. But the current financially constrained list is 30.3 million, and so some of these projects are going to be deprioritized. And then the bottom, you can see the draft list as it currently is before these kind of corrections have been made by bike, freight, PED, intersections, and then shared bike and PED, and then the total list there at the end. Did you want to talk more about this? I might have butchered that.
No, I think we realized we started working on this process, thinking maybe we'd be further along with TSP adoption. And we wanted to, we're not quite there yet, but we wanted to make sure that we had a discussion about like sort of the fundamentals of STCs. It's been a while since we've talked about it. We wanted to walk you through like the process for how we develop the transportation STCs, knowing that we're going to come back once we've adopted the TSP with the lists and the projects in there, and we've updated our CIP as well, and then back and recalculate what those STCs will look like. You know, there's still some adjustments that we'll do at the end, you know, similar to our water and wastewater STCs. I anticipate we're going to come back to you with a tiered STC for single family residential, where it's tiered based on building footprint size. So we'll see that. So we'll be consistent along with our water and wastewater STCs.
So is this number, if I'm understanding correctly, the current list, which we're going to be talking about in our regular session, this is the number after the Planning Commission's recent meeting and their list? So we're $3 million over, just shy of $3 million over what we...
I don't know the answer to that. This was the most recent documentation that I'd had to share with them. So
first draft that was submitted by Kittleson was $3 million over. Planning Commission has it at 27.5 million, so they're at the
Yeah.
allotment. But I think it shouldn't matter at all because they're looking at the constrained list. So it doesn't matter what the 4 buckets are, they're looking at the entire list of the 180.
That is true for SSC purposes, yeah. That's true.
I mean, I think I would like to actually have this printed out for tonight's discussion, just this page. I would like to have that when we get to tonight's discussion. I think that would be useful to have. That's interesting.
A couple more slides here. So this one is a survey of the SDCs in the area. I think what you're going to notice very quickly is if you look at Milwaukie and orange there at the bottom, even if you adopted the maximum charge that we calculated, you would still be at the very bottom of this list. So your current charge for a single family residence is $24.70. It would go up to at most $3,982. You can see that a lot of these jurisdictions have much higher SDCs, partly because they have shared overlapping jurisdictions. So for example, the TDT rate is the Washington County Transportation System Development Charge, called the TDT. So a lot of those jurisdictions have that in place as well as their local SDCs. And they also have SDCs for specific sub areas that are, expanding in their city. And so that really add up. That's why Milwaukee's at the bottom of the list, basically.
So Washington County has a transportation development tax that is collected by the cities and it's collected as part of an SDC, or it's just an outright tax?
It is a voted tax, but it is a system development charge. It is structured, calculated exactly as a system development charge. So it's TDT, but it is an SDC. And as Zach said, several of these, what you see them listed, Tiger, Hillsborough, Wall, Beaverton, TDT applies in those cities. And then some of them also have local charges that they add to the TDT for their own infrastructure in high growth areas like South Cooper Mountain, South Hillsborough, Tiger River Terrace. And that's where some of these really big numbers are coming from. We were talking about Wilsonville a little bit earlier. You see their charge well over $15,000 for a single family residence. They just adopted stormwater and wastewater SDCs last night that will continue to keep them at they're well over $50,000 for a new single family. Wow. So you add all 5 of their SDCs together. So there, some of the more rapidly growing areas that need infrastructure, we're seeing pretty big numbers. So one, and then, that makes steps up there. Whatever revisions there are to make, the upcoming TSP project, the new TSP in that project list would be incorporated into this analysis. And whenever that analysis has sort of settled, issue that 90-day notice, which you have to do in advance of the public hearing in which you could adopt in TSDC. And then, as I mentioned, we'll have a draft report available for scrutiny the last 60 days of that 90-day period. And then it's up to you to consider adoption. So, yeah, and Peter mentioned the scaling by dwelling unit size. That is something and I'd say an emerging trend. Milwaukee's already there with water and wastewater. That is something we can do with the transportation SDC as well. So that smaller dwelling units pay lower SDCs.
I think we have talked a little bit about scaling SDCs by size, but there also have been different ideas about scaling SDCs by other factors to incentivize certain types of development. I think about scaling SDCs for the affordability of units that are being built, or scaling SDCs based on the amount of green space that they provide on the development. Is that something that's appropriate to include in the scope of your work, or is that something that is a policy decision outside of what you're bringing forward in your report?
So one of the legal requirements when you put together a system development charge is that you use rate-making principles. That's right out of the statute. So what that means is we have to be careful not to scale them for reasons that are not trip generation based or cost based or impact based. And so unless we can show a nexus between affordable housing and fewer trips generated, then you're on, I guess, some shakier ground. That's what so the scaling by dwelling unit size is an attempt to create a nexus between smaller dwelling unit sizes, fewer trips, in the hope that those will be more affordable. And then you've got a legally defensible.
I guess what you're describing here is, this is talking about the maximums. Milwaukie can make a policy choice to go below the maximums that we scale up.
On an overall basis, though, not on an individual land use basis.
And can you explain that a little more?
Right, so if we propose a maximum charge of, what was it? 2,600 per trip, right? So you could scale that rate down if you don't want to go that high. But what you couldn't do is say, well, for single family, we're going to scale this down. But for multifamily, we're going to keep it at the same maximum rate.
But could you, choose, as a policy choice, choose to waive SDCs on affordable developments?
So our recommendation would be, if you do that, that you replenish the SDC fund with other money from outside the SDC fund. Because if you don't do that, you are subsidizing certain types of development, and you've made it more difficult to execute
Yeah.
project list that you have gone to great pains to calculate a proportionate share for everyone. So now my proportionate share is no longer a proportionate share if you're giving the
Sure.
SDCs to others. So that's our
Yeah.
recommendation.
So you have to backfill it.
You got to backfill it. Yes.
You don't have to, but that's your
That's our
recommendation.
recommendation. Our strong recommendation is you backfill discounting. And I just to correct, or just to clarify our terminology. When I'm talking about scaling, I'm talking about taking the same system development charge and creating a structure in which you charge smaller dwelling units, lower charges, larger dwelling units, higher charges. In theory, it's revenue neutral. It's, Zach's point, yeah, if you're going to adopt something less than the maximum, I would call that discounting, and that you should do to everyone, right? You shouldn't be picking a result and say, yeah, we're going to apply this to light industrial, but not retail. You should do that as an across-the-board discount in the resulting SDC.
And to clarify, your need to backfill is because our list then that we've used to establish a maximum SDC is less legally defensible if we don't backfill. Is that accurate?
Your ability to execute that list and provide the proportionate share that you calculated for everybody who paid an SDC
Okay.
is now in jeopardy, because you can't, in theory, you can't recover that full cost if you are exempting certain customers.
That makes sense, yeah.
Can I frame a question this way? I've heard in the news, some neighboring cities
Yes,
also might not name, might be
Yeah.
waiving SDCs for a chunk of time.
Yes,
Are they backfilling, do you know?
I know that they're not.
Okay.
So, yeah, you know, and that's our recommendation. Are there cities that do it? Yeah. Yes. And I don't think they've been sued yet, but I'd rather be, we would never do that. We wouldn't take a side in a case like that.
Yes.
But I'd rather be on the side that was attacking that practice.
Sure.
than The other side.
John, can you make an adjustment to SDCs for development based on proximity to transit?
Yes. Yeah, in fact, we've done that in Oregon City. For one, they've got a 10% discount on SDCs along Milwaukie, and because of the proximity to transit. There are some other things you can do in your downtown core. That's an issue. In Corvallis, we looked at treating the whole, they have a pretty well-defined downtown in Corvallis. And they basically treated the whole area as if it were a shopping center, figuring people park once and then might do a number of different errands so that you're not charging a bank a full, which has a super high trip generation rate, a full bank rate, and then another business in downtown core people rate that. So yes, there are things you can do to accomplish.
But is that something council would be interested in looking at?
Oh, I think the it's close to transit is definitely
Yeah.
something we want to look at. How close? I mean, I guess we get to decide, is it a quarter mile, is it a half mile sort of thing?
We might ask Hiddleston about that. When we did that, in Oregon City, for example, we worked with the transportation engineers who wrote the TSP. In that case, it was DKS, and they were able to say, yeah, it's, they had a pretty well-defined area, and they said, yeah, it's 10%.
I mean, the complicating factor there is we hear, TriMet's probably going to have service cuts, right? And yeah, I mean, it's sort of like what transit lines, what's frequent transit versus some transit line that only, like on Lake Road, that only goes a few times a day, so yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of details to be worked out there, but we've always talked about wanting to.
Would it be based upon distance or, I thought we were moving more toward time in the TSP.
You mean walk shed, like,
Walk shares,
yeah, 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 well, I think that's fair, yeah,
I don't know. Kills.
yeah.
So just so I clarify this, if you wanted to set up an SDC discount similar to like what Wes has, where the SDC, if it's an affordable, it's not a waiver, but it's a discount. It's based on the affordability of the home. If it's 60% MHI, 80% MHI, or 100% of MHI, they're paying a certain rate based on that. You can do something like that as long as you're backfilling it. I mean, you can do it either way. You can do it either way, but you're just saying it's a smarter way to do it. The more responsible way to do it would be to backfill that. But it's
Are
not.
you sure Wes is doing that with
They had it-
SDCs or with their rates?
No, it's with SDCs.
It's with SDCs?
Yeah, and I'll get the.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to see
I
that.
know they scale them by dwelling unit size, they're SDCs.
Yeah. This was something that they were looking into doing a few months ago. But yeah.
Yeah.
And then that was the whole thing, was that backfilling it though. That was their key, that they were, because I mean, the reality of it is how many of those developments are you actually going to get? It's not going to be something like one of these or, you know what I mean? Like those developments are few as they are right now. So the idea is to try to get more in there. But even if you had 10, the hole that it would fill is probably not going to be as much as if you were to, waive it for, if it was on the scale of market rate development.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So can I ask you, Peter, so let's assume we passed the TSP in December, as was said on the slides, and then they need a couple months to do this analysis, so we're probably looking at like a May-ish hearing date?
I think dependent on when the TSP is adopted, maybe another month or so to put something together, and then we would come back, report out, do the 90-day. So yeah, I think May, June, we're looking at is realistic.
And are we also going to be looking at stormwater by then?
We're looking at, I think Scott shared that we hope to have that document ready for adoption in the spring.
Okay.
It's probably, the stormwater's probably a little bit after that.
Okay. 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 Other questions? Councilor Stavenjord, any questions from you? Okay. All right, if no questions, we'll move on to our next thing. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for coming. We'll see you again next year, I guess.
Yeah, Merry Christmas.
That's my first Merry Christmas. Okay. Right. And our next item is utility code updates. So Peter stays at the table and Michael Adjourn, our finance director, joins him.
Spent a lot of time on this PowerPoint, so you all know.
I made the mistake of asking his city manager if he did a PowerPoint. I'm not always a PowerPoint.
Good afternoon, everybody. We're here to talk about utility code changes that Peter and I are proposing. What we're looking to do is to clarify and define parts of the code that are ambiguous to us. So that's in pertaining to ownership of service lines, temporary water service, and who's responsible for leaks. Another thing that we're looking about is delinquency. I'd like to update the code to give us a little bit of flexibility on when we enact past dues and shutoffs. It's right now defined currently that it's the third Thursday of the month that we do shutoffs. I'd like to have a little bit of flexibility on that. And I'd also like to give discretion to me being a finance director and Emma being a city manager to be flexible in those dates as we go out throughout the year, and holidays and different things come up against it. So we just like to have it a little bit broader so that we can be a little bit fair and have our industry.
Mike, you spent all this time on your PowerPoint, but we actually aren't.
We go to it. Here,
Oh, there we go. I'm like, I thought we were just getting a prep.
I was doing that. So as I outlined in the staff report, the 4 areas that we're looking at, number 1 that we can talk about in order is ownership of the service lines. We'd like to clearly define who's responsible, and I think there's the meter is the boundary that we have, and everything. Well,
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that. So I think it seems sort of fuzzy in our current code on ownership. And when I say fuzzy, there's not some clear delineations at where does really the homeowner or property owner's responsibility take place. Right now, what we communicate to customers is the city maintains the service line from where it's tapped into the water main in the street to the meter, and to include the meter. That meter generally 99.5% of the time is located in the right of way, right on the edge of the right of way. It's the homeowner or property owner's responsibility to maintain that service line from the meter into the property. I think what I want to do is put some language into the code that really spells out their responsibility begins from the point of discharge of the meter. So the discharge line coming out of the meter to the home, that's where their responsibility takes on. So if there's a leak, it's that homeowner's responsibility to maintain and repair that leak on that part of the line. Everything else, the meter and back to the main, the city takes care of. So just sort of really clearly delineating that piece of responsibility there.
So I guess I assumed that was how the responsibility fell, but you're saying you have to fight that battle with people when the leak is on their side of the meter?
From time to time, if it's within the box,
Yeah.
the meter box, that sort of pops up. So I just want to get that sort of better defined. And that sort of fits more of the sort of industry standard.
How does if there's a leak at that end, are you saying that it's coming from the pipe that's attached to the meter, or would it be more so from the housing of the meter?
It would be generally from the pipe coming out of the meter.
Well, typically, isn't that like a stub pipe that goes to a flange or something like that? It's a short length of pipe that goes that comes out from the meter, and then there's a flange or attachment point from there to goes to the house. I mean, it doesn't go directly from the meter into the house.
It can, sometimes, yeah, it can go directly from the meter, through the meter box into the house, yeah.
So does that mean that as soon as it leaves the meter housing, then that's their responsibility?
Well, what I'm saying is, if there's a leak on the discharge side of the meter, it's the responsibility. Anything from where it comes out of the meter, it's that property's responsibility.
That may sound like a really detailed question, but trust me, you'll find that argument at some point,
Yeah, yeah.
And how many, I had this question last week when we were talking about the billing and stuff. How frequently do we find leaks?
I think.
Monthly, like every
Oh,
month when every month? Okay.
We have leaks in our system, we have parts of our system that are old, constructed in the 20s. And we have service lines that, homeowners haven't replaced in a long time, right? So, water service line, sewer laterals, those are things that, they're underground, that people don't pay attention to, and it's always a problem. So we do see a lot of leaks on the customer, certainly on the customer side of the water meter. We also have leaks on our side too that we go out and respond to and repair. Part of it's, I think, related to how we have our system set up in terms of pressure. I think I mentioned last week, we have some places where you can see the pressure, the water pressure pushing 100 pounds per square inch. So, which the higher the pressure, you like that in the home when you're taking a shower, you're using your hose outside, but it impacts all the joints and there's an impact to the system, so.
We have an average of 5 leaks reports that we have a month. So people submit those into AV, and sometimes they're on our side, and most of the time they're on the homeowner side, but we get 5 leak adjustment requests per month.
That's customers actually saying, I think there must be a leak.
Yeah. Usually the
It's
most
not-
common is the toilets overrunning.
Yeah.
And if you read the code, it's the property owner's responsibility to pay for the water that goes through the meter. So we make some adjustments to customers when they have identified problems. But really, so that's one of the things that I'd like to sort of clarify in code. And then, we also have there's some fuzziness related to the temporary water service. Sometimes people will want to use fire hydrants for filling swimming pools, and other types of purposes that are outside of construction. What we do for construction projects is we have an assembly that we've put together that we will rent out, and we require a deposit for the contractor to take that out, and then we're going to bill a much higher rate per unit. I think it's pushing like $9 per cubic unit of water that goes through. I may be a little bit wrong, but it's at a much higher level. So the assembly that we put together has an accurate meter, so they'll measure how much water they're using. They can connect that to a hydrant. And it also has protection, so we don't have any, if we have a low pressure event in our system, it's not going to pull, don't protect it from getting things sucked into the water system. So I really just want to clearly say it's for construction activities and not for other general uses, so. And then I think that responsibility for leaks, so, who pays for repairs when leaks occur on different sides of the meter? So just sort of clarifying that language in the current code.
Peter, why would anyone use temporary water for general use if it costs more?
Convenience.
Convenience.
Yeah, you can fill up a.
Just the-
What is that? I mean, I have a neighbor who does the pool filling, who asks the city to help fill their pool every year.
You may have somebody that will want to, maybe they have a service line on that's, they're having a problem with the service line.
Okay.
And they'll want to have something temporarily until they can repair their service line.
And if they are using something that's attached to the hydrant, presumably if the fire department actually needed a hydrant, they disconnect what people have. Okay.
So the last one is, as I talked about earlier, delinquency. Right now, the code reads that we do shut off on the third Thursday of the month. I was just hoping to make it more flexible, giving us a 7-day period. That can help us too with like public works. Sometimes if they have something on that Thursday, they don't need to drop what they're doing at that moment and do just shut offs. We can have a little bit more leniency. We also don't want to do this on Fridays because we don't want anybody to shut off over the weekend, so it gives us to the following Monday. We've come up against it during the holiday schedule too. Thanksgiving is usually around that time, so we're really trying, it's interrupting the billing process as we're, for the future month, as we're doing this. So giving a 7-day kind of window and giving finance director and city manager discretion.
And I think it's fair to say we've actually been operating on those that way. I think you guys saw in one of my more recent updates, we chose not to do shut-offs at the end of August. It was in the middle of a heat wave and I didn't feel like it was an okay move for public health and safety. But we also just would love to make sure we're not acting out of compliance with our code. And this is pretty prescriptive how it currently is written with the third Thursday. So this isn't about just trying to let us off the hook. It's about allowing us to be flexible when we need to support customers and not put vulnerable folks in a tough spot when there's holidays or unforeseen weather events.
Yeah, I think all of those things about, when you give notice, when it's deemed late and all that should not be really spelled out in the code. I mean, other than people should get notice, should get at least a couple days notice, I guess. So they have the time to run in and cure if they're able to do so before they get shut off. Yeah. I mean, it seems kind of crazy to me to have that level of detail in the code.
There's sometimes where you need level of detail and there's sometimes we're not. These are just kind of transposed a little bit.
So don't go for it.
I was just going to say, I think, we looked at these as trying to fix specific issues. And I know maybe there's a larger look. I know Mary, you had said some questions about some other places in the code that we didn't bring up as things that we wanted to address. I know that chapter is not a real extensive long chapter, so perhaps we could maybe address some of those other things too.
Yeah, Dan is our last agenda item for this work session, but I think, I guess we have another work session scheduled for this in about a month and a half. Because we knew we weren't going to put code in front of you today. We wanted to sort of make sure you were comfortable with the direction we're going. The next time we'll bring code. If there's no concerns with some of the proposals up here, I could pull up the code and we could walk through, Mayor, your other points if you'd like.
Sure, we've got time to do that. I mean, I think a lot of them were lawyerly things.
I think it's the language that's consistent with some of our other communities.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, you're so small. Let's see if I can improve this.
Did you bring a towel for your nap?
One of the perks of having kids.
So Mayor, you had a comment in the definitions, which I thought was a good cleanup thing of just,
So it defines city, or public works director or director for public works director. And I just noted that in a lot of our different code cleanups over the last few years, we have kind of moved to putting everything as the city manager or the designee and not director level. That is really, I just wanted to flag that. I don't have a strong view on that. I just want to flag that as something we've done elsewhere, and you guys decide whether you think that's appropriate or not.
sounds good.
I wanted to just understand under 0.20 application, it says the public works director reviews the application. Is it just public works that reviews these applications, or do engineers have to look at it?
So I think this was at a time before I started where the public work, when this code was originally, the public works director had full engineering staff
Under them.
under them. So there's a couple people there. So like our SAP engineering staff, it's the city engineer will probably play that biggest role in terms of improving that, those drawings.
Okay, so you may need a word tweak there or two. And then, then section 4.0 says applicants must agree to conform to quote unquote rules and regulations established for the municipal water system. Is that this document, or is there some other document that is meant by that?
Sorry, computer's fighting me. Must be made on forms furnished by the city where the form will be completed by city employees. That's the one you're talking about?
No, the 040 says applicants must agree to conform to the quote unquote rules and regulations established for the municipal water system. Is it just shall comply with this code simply, or is there some other outside document that is the rules and regulations established for the
I
municipal
think that
water
allows
system?
us to put together
An outside document.
outside document, rules and regulations, sort of utility service. Rules and regulations if we wanted to.
Okay.
But
We
it would
don't.
also include this, wouldn't it?
It would include that as well, yeah, for sure.
Okay. There's a reference to a utility committee we don't have, and maybe it needs to be replaced with the quack.
Yeah.
Oh, and then it says your water bill will also include sewer. Well, now, of course, our water bill includes safe fees and all these new fees. So do we need to amend that language, or do we need to just take out sewer? So
I think we should amend the language and reflect that it's really a utility bill, right? That covers it's not just a water bill.
water bill, right?
Yeah.
So,
Right.
Which we'll talk about more in
Yeah.
just a second.
Right. Water sinking fund. Do we have a water sinking fund?
No,
No. Okay.
it's just part of our fund, it's just part of our water fund.
Yeah, and like our reserves and stuff. So maybe we should eliminate that. Okay.
It's a water sinking fund.
Is that a sinkhole?
I think you'll see some utilities, they'll set up a separate fund to capture funds for capital improvement projects and depreciation. So you're moving the funds out of the water fund and putting them in a separate water reserves fund.
Yeah, it's defined in here in section D up there to provide revenue for emergency repair and maintenance costs in addition to other budgeted water revenues. But I believe we utilize our water fund reserves.
Yeah, I wonder if maybe we didn't have, back in 1978, maybe we didn't have very robust reserves. I don't know what Oregon, budget law required back then, but yeah. Okay. Subpart E, in the event the city requests a supplemental budget expense, it seemed to me like that whole thing is addressed in budget law and probably shouldn't be addressed in here, right? Oh, good, my lawyer skills.
Sharp, Mayor.
And then section 180 is
You
the
wouldn't want to cut her water off. man.
penalty.
She's on a loophole.
I just paid my bill today, in fact. Yeah, there's dollar figures in there for penalties, and should all that be in our fee schedule? Or should it be in here? I mean, we do have penalty dollar figures, I guess, in the tree code and stuff, or do we?
We have, we put it in our stormwater or erosion control. We have specific fees that are outlined there for escalating enforcement. I think we'll look at that.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I don't have a strong feeling, but I just remembered that we moved some of that to the fee schedule. Okay, yeah. Oh, and then, it says fees should be set by council resolution, and those kind of things should probably be,
Consolidated.
yeah, reference to the fee schedule.
The fee schedule, council consolidated by resolution.
Yeah.
Scott, I'm really sorry. Can you reshare Mike's PowerPoint and put the last slide up? While he's doing that, it sounds, I'm not hearing heartburn from any members of council for us moving forward with both the bigger picture edits and the lawyer update for a draft code update that we'll bring to you in a month and a half. Is that okay? Okay. And then this last bit, we got a community comment, not actually really about this, it's more about the public safety fee, but because it's about our utility bill, we figured we would address it here. So Mike, do you want to talk through this?
Yeah, I believe the question was, if somebody is not on water and sewer, would they still have to pay city fees, SSMP city and public safety fee? So I got with Amy and we have roughly 24 accounts that mostly are in the island station that fit this definition. And we currently send them a bill for those fees. So they are being included. And the way that we're kind of looking at this is we're not looking at it based on who provides the water service, but whether they live inside or outside of city limits.
So I think the concern from the commenter was, well, if sometimes people say water bill still is shorthand, right? And so we've now said we're adding a public safety fee to the bill. And their concern, I think, was, well, what about the folks who don't get a city water bill? They will still get that because they will still get a city utility bill, which covers whatever applicable utilities apply to that home, even if they don't pay city water and or sewer. There is, and I don't think we need to dive into it here, but in a future sort of code update work, we might be coming back talking to you about enforcement leverage. It's a lot, water is sort of a shut off for your water. It kind of makes you pay attention. There's not a lot we can do when you don't pay your safe fee. We can use the collection system and those kinds of things. It's not a massive issue. We're not running into this, but because we are a city that has some customers or some residents that are not our water customers, it is something we're thinking about because these other utility fees are important pieces. So just want to make you prepared. You may hear some stuff from us in the future asking for other code tweaks that just allow us for those customers that don't get water service from the city, ways that we can ensure we are collecting stormwater safe, SSMP, and public safety.
So these 24, they get some sort of utility bill.
They do.
Okay.
And then just to be clear, there's, I believe, just over 300 that get water from CRW, but they rebill them for everything else, all the other utilities.
So that's city water and sewer, right?
Yeah.
The 24 is water hands.
Yeah.
They don't, they're either Oak Lodge or CRW.
So I think everyone got that email.
Yeah,
You
it
guys
was,
did? So who's going to answer?
well, I already answered them, but, and, you know, I said I would find out the answer to this question. I mean, I'm happy to follow up with them.
I can too.
I mean, whoever wants to can answer them.
There you
I've
go.
already corresponded with them.
then that's fine, yeah.
Just the recording of this will also be up tomorrow, so.
Yeah, we can, that's what I would do, is point them to this.
It's a big question though.
Yeah, it was.
Okay,
Anything else?
It's fine.
All right.
all right.
Well, thank you. And last item on today's work session is an update on the Leadership Academy from Dan Harris, our events and volunteer coordinator.
Okay, there's 1 minute to transition here real quick. Good? Oh, we good.
Fantastic.
Let's give our Massey a minute. Oh, he's in the room. Okay. He can hear you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Councilor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you all so much for having me here with you once again. My name is Dan Harris. They, them, I am your event and volunteer coordinator. Don't mind this name tag, it's notional. That's the correct.
Scott.
I am here tonight with the very happy business of talking to you about an unequivocally successful program here in Milwaukie, the Milwaukie Leadership Academy. So just as a little bit of a background on this program for anybody who might see this meeting and be hearing about it for the first time, the Milwaukie Leadership Academy is something that was launched a number of years ago, 6 or 7 years back now, to create a situation where members of the community who wanted to learn about how city government functions and ways for them to be better involved could be just an allergies flared up. Could become more involved. And we have seen graduates of that academy go on to participate in their neighborhood associations, in community groups, planning commission, and at least one council president. So with that, this is a program that is facilitated by a longtime community member, Seth Lashbrook, and he unfortunately could not be here this evening with us. Some pressing business kept him in Hawaii.
Yeah.
But I would be remiss if I did not take the opportunity every time I come to talk about this program to say what an incredible asset he is, not only to the Leadership Academy, but to our community. I am truly grateful to have that kind of community partnership and to have him show up in the way he does. It would be a very, very different program without him. And someday he'll find other things to do with his time and it will be a different program. But in the meantime, we're glad he's with us. So the 2024 through 25 cohort, we started with 25 students. Generally speaking, that is where we have left the cutoff. You get too much higher than that, and it just becomes a little bit cumbersome in terms of how we're fitting folks into rooms. If we're doing field trips, we do plan 3 field trips each year to the public safety building, to the library, and to the Johnson Creek campus. At a certain point, it's 2 of us, and whoever the presenter is sort of walking a group of 40 people around, and it can get a little bit cumbersome. 16 students approximately completed more than half the sessions. What we generally see in these is that there is a drop off after the first session, just as people come in and say, hey, you know what, I don't know if I really do want to do this or not. And this year we had 2 or 3 folks who messaged me after the first session and said, hey, I don't think it's for me. And I told him to lose my number. I told him don't come back. No, that's not true. No, I told him that's completely understandable. No hard feelings. If you change your mind in the future, please register again. We'd be happy to have you. Where we really saw the drop off this year, honestly, was after November. We had 5 or 6 people drop all at once after the events that month. And I think that there was probably some sense that perhaps local government was not something that people wanted to be spending their time on. I will say though, although I was really concerned coming into this year, we actually got 33 people to register before I closed down registration. So we are well over capacity right now. And just given that we know that there is a certain amount of attrition, usually in the neighborhood of 10 participants every year, I'm of a mind to let the 33 stay. And I think we'll get to a place where we have probably about 25 by the time it's all said and done, which is a great number. And if we have 33 people stay all the way through, even better. We'll figure that out. Classes are held October through June. These are in the evenings. This year, we've been able to sync them up with the 3rd Wednesday of each month. In the past, we've had to shift it around a little bit just due to staff availability and holidays. I really felt terrible. There was a year that we did it, and a student who had been very actively involved was not able to attend a couple of sessions because they conflicted with the specific holidays that they celebrate in their family. So now we have a number of calendars. I have a number of calendars that I go through and compare our proposed schedule against to try to not exclude anybody. I think we managed to avoid that this year. We do generally skip December just because with all of the events and with all of the different holiday planning and everything else, that's a little bit of a tough nut to crack. But in this past year, my associate, Mr. Lashbrook, suggested that we could have a class on the actual concept of leadership in a leadership academy. It makes a certain amount of sense. It was reasonably well attended. Our plan this year is to float that to the class at the first session and say, hey, if this is something folks would be interested in, we're happy to facilitate it. And if not, that's okay. We don't have to do it. Otherwise, though, I think on the next slide we get, oh, no, that's actually one after this. This is just our prospective class schedule for the coming year. Again, like I said, 3rd Wednesday of each month. We try to pair up two city departments, divisions with the recent reorganization. That's a little bit fuzzier in terms of this class. But we do think we've got a pretty good combination of people, of programs rather. There is a certain amount of synergy between police and engineering, for example. Library and finance, I'll grant you, that's a bit of a stretch, but what do we think about borrowing and lending? Not that, not I think so. All to say, 8 classes over the course of 9 months, and people seem to be enjoying it. Some things that we did change this year as opposed to previous years. Classes were 15 minutes longer. We used to run from 6 to 8, but there was always this sense of, gosh, things are just cramped. We'd like to have a little bit more time to ask questions. We'd like our presenters to be able to speak a little bit longer. And so we added more breathing room. We've seen less reliance on hybrid sessions this year. In the past, it was pretty common since the pandemic to have a sizable number of people participating every month remotely, and we're just watching that decline. We're going to keep the hybrid sessions as an option. It costs us nothing. It's not particularly cumbersome to make that happen, particularly here in City Hall. When we do the field trip portions, so again, public safety building, the Johnson Creek campus and the library, it's a little bit more difficult, but I think that we should be able to, at least for the spoken parts of those presentations, have folks participate remotely. They just miss out on the actual tours of the buildings, which that's unfortunate. But again, we work with what's available. We did have to cancel one of those field trips this year because there was a ball-sized hail and tornadoes. And we thought, yeah, you know what? Public Works is probably going to be busy tonight. We should leave them to do that. And then, of course, that was a big camping program. It was, significant. I mean, there's quite a hailstorm, but nothing golf ball sized. Better safe than sorry. As I said, we have our schedule plotted out for this year. We've got 33 active and enthusiastic Milwaukeeans who are ready to jump in and learn. Mayor Beatty, I know that you have accepted the invitation to the first class, and Emma, I think Joseph will be there as well. And otherwise, we are rocking and rolling. So with that, again, that's been my presentation. If anybody watching this has any questions about it, my contact email address is right there. Please do reach out to me.
So I'm going to say that some years back, I don't remember if you were running the program. Oh, you fixed it.
See, that's administrative excellence.
There you go. They invited every counselor to come to a different session, even though maybe they weren't on the agenda, but to come and just be introduced and sit in and be part of the conversation. Do you think that's,
It's an open invitation. It absolutely is. And if any of you here tonight would like to come, then we would love to have you. Please let me know, and we'll have you there. And I'm sure that the class would appreciate the opportunity to speak to our elected officials, even if we just did it briefly, a little short Q&A.
Could you just put up the schedule again, Dan? Because I think, Mayor, you're taken care of in October.
And I would just say that what we've done in the past is that we've invited the council president, and that's an annual rotating.
Yes, so it could be a different council president next year.
Whoever is the council president in the spring, I'll be reaching out and saying, hey, please join us for this last one because we're going to talk about council goals and a great place for the council president.
But I think if you want to, I think this is in your packet too, but if any of these topics are particularly of interest, put it on your calendar. It's 5:45 to 8.
5:45 to 8, but it's not necessary to attend for the entire evening. You are welcome to attend for the entire evening, but it's, if you say, hey, I'm going to be available from 6 to 6:30, could I come in and check the class out? Sure. Yeah, we'd love to have you.
great. Yeah, I definitely recommend it. It's always nice to meet people. A lot of them you'll see later as applicants for boards and committees. So, yeah.
And thank you, Mayor Beatty, for suggesting that we reach out to folks who were not selected for boards and committees this year. I think, a lot of the time there are people who come in with a lot of enthusiasm, but maybe not enough information, or maybe not enough experience, or maybe don't know what exactly these different departments are doing. And this is a good opportunity for folks to learn about that. Like I said, we are very, very full this year right now, but it is an annual program. And anybody who watches this and thinks, darn, I would have liked to have done that. We will be opening this up again next August, September. So keep an eye out. It's coming back around.
And it's interesting to me that you had the drop off that you feel was prompted by the election, because we had, when we got to spring, we had our biggest number of applicants ever for boards and commissions, which I also kind of attribute to the fall election, because people kind of felt like, oh, I can't do anything on the national level, but I can do something in my own town. I definitely got that sense from a number of people. Yeah.
I will say, and this is something that I share with the class, I have at various times in my career worked for the federal government, the government of the state of Oregon, and now at a local level. And I so much respect and admiration for people who are making those big national, statewide, doing that work. There is a lot to be said for the work that is done in local government and done at a local level. And one of the great things about working for a city the size of Milwaukie is that if you have an idea for something, a Milwaukie Fest, a leadership academy, which was not my idea originally, but it was somebody's, you can come in and pitch it, and there's a fair chance that you actually see that change happen. So, lot to be said for local government.
Dan, I know that we have some non-residents who attend. Are they typically from the surrounding area?
They are, Counselor. What ends up happening is that that's almost always, when I say that we have a drop-off after the first class, almost always it'll be a couple of people from unincorporated Clackamas County with a Milwaukie address who realize, oh, well, this isn't actually my government. So I'm in the habit now when I see somebody apply with a 97267 zip code of reaching out to them and saying, hey, you are a Milwaukeean, right? You are part of the wider community. To be very clear, you are not a resident of the city of Milwaukee. So if you would like to come learn about local government and this specific local government, we'd love to have you. And if you decide, well, it's not my government, I don't want anything to do with it, that's also completely fine. I think the two things that we see from the Milwaukie Leadership Academy is that, in terms of defection and dropout, is that not everyone is sure where Milwaukie is, including people who live in places that the post office, for reasons of its own, has decided are Milwaukie. And when we call it a leadership academy, some people have the notion, well, great, I'm going to come learn how to be a leader, as opposed to speaking with city leaders. And we've kicked around in the past potentially changing it. I think if we went with something in the future like Milwaukie Academy or something like that, I think that would be fine too. I also think we've done a pretty good job of communicating at this point what it is and what it isn't. So other than the folks who just flat don't live in city limits, I think for the most part people come in with an understanding that, no, I'm going to learn about how the city works.
I was just going to say thanks for all your work on this. Like, this was my introduction. A lot of doing. I know for a lot of the people, like, I've kept in touch with a lot of the people in my cohort. They're doing cool stuff on boards and committees and helping out in other ways too. So you're doing something really cool with this.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Just two quick things. I misspoke and our recorder corrected me. The council president is an every 2 years thing. It's or if it's a special election. So
After any election.
any election. So you may be still around.
Stand by.
And second, I want to commend Dan. Dan has so many talents, as the always double-barreled name of your job description suggests. Whether it's throwing a great party or coordinating volunteers or in your previous position helping out with emergency management. But I always love seeing them shine as the facilitator of this. You have, I mean, in a future life, become a college professor, because I just think you have this really engaging, enigmatic way of leading a conversation and making what could be very dry conversations really inspiring and interesting. So it's fun to watch Dan at work, and I do encourage you to go see it in action.
Well, thank you very much. It's like I said, it's a free show put on approximately 8 times a year.
All right, well, if no other questions for Dan, we'll let them go.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
Anything?
We have a few minutes. I did want to ask, I thought I'd take time to ask, has anybody offered a tour of the Concord Center and nobody could do it? Does nobody want to do it, or would they be interested in another time? Because Joseph said we could go back for a different time.
Well, I had a park commitment I couldn't make, but we thought we were going to grand opening also for.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just thought I would,
You would just wait for the grand opening. If that's the way people feel, that's fine. We'll tell NCPRD that we don't want to. I had asked for an advanced tour for you guys back in like May, because they were giving other tours then. At this point, it is the grand opening is October 18th. It's a Saturday, October 18th. The date they had proposed for us to tour was, I think, the 29th, and I know the council president's in Salem then. It was also middle of the day. I thought, well, maybe it'd be easier for some of you if it was like at 4 or 5 instead of the middle of the day.
What day is that? The 29th?
Well, I've got in our email the 25th is the day that we're.
Oh, is it 25th?
Uh-huh.
Oh, that's,
And I think our.
And I think you were the only one, council president, so it can be.
oh, I'm sorry. I thought you couldn't do it.
Well, no, I would love the company.
So, I mean, it's really your call as to whether you guys want to, any or all of you want to do it ahead of the general public opening. I mean, I would go, if I'm available, I would go. Just, I've been there twice. I haven't been there since the playground and stuff is in. Yeah. So do we want to ask NCPRD for another time? Or you had the 25th, you were available?
25th works for me.
25th
I
at
think it's
noon.
valuable
Okay.
for us all to see too, so happy to ask. See.
I'm good, let's just go with the current.
Okay.
I don't know if I can make the Thursday one yet.
Okay. That's the 25th.
Yeah, that's.
I mean, if you could do a later afternoon, I knew that sometimes it's easier for you later in the afternoon. I
Hey,
mean,
what time was this
would
one?
that work for you?
Totally. Yeah.
So we could ask them
Yeah,
that.
that's fine.
Just ask them to do later in the day that day?
Yeah,
Okay.
Later in the day on the
25th.
25th.
For some reason I had 29th in my head, but if that's what, you're looking at the email, I'm not. So,
Okay.
yeah, okay. That'd be great. Okay. And Counselor Stavengard, if you want to join, you of course are invited to.
I will try my best to be there. I'll put it on the calendar now and keep my fingers crossed.
Okay, great. All right, anything else short that we should do before we break for dinner? Okay, then we're broken, we're adjourned, and we'll come back at 6:30 for the regular session.